Miss Manners with a mean streak, sex negative, the most dangerous gay writer alive. These are just a few of the ways that Bruce Bauer has been described over the last year. What an honor to receive such titles. And to that, I'm glad that we can add the Log Cabin Leadership Award tonight. And personally, I want to say it's one of my greatest honors because I'm a big fan of Bruce, as he well knows. Now, Bruce is the author of 9 books, about 300 and some articles, 25 published poems. And after doing all that, he decided to share his philosophy and belief about the direction of the gay movement. And Bruce was kind enough to send me a copy of the book before it came out, and I read it, and page after page I kept earmarking, folding and bending, and saying, I can't believe it. I agree with this guy. This is fantastic. I've never read anything like this before. This is so exciting. And then, as the book came out, the reviews came out. And some of the comments I said in the beginning were some of the comments the reviewers said. And nothing more dramatically defines the disconnect in our community than the fact that these reviews were saying this was a frightening book, and the Lambda book list of #1 bestsellers had Bruce's book at the #1 top of the charts for 6 months, and it's still a bestseller in its numerous reproductions. Bruce has said something very radical in his book. He has suggested that when we take our case to the American people, we share what we have in common and not what separates us. That's a radical idea for our community, and it's something that we in Log Cabin have also been stressing. So we come together tonight to offer you this award, and we know how difficult it is in challenging ways of thinking, challenging the establishment, and we want to give you a warm welcome tonight as you address us and offering all of us a place at the table. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you. This is lovely. This is really wonderful. I want to thank you all for the award. Thank you for having me here. It's been quite a year. And when A Place at the Table first came out last fall, my publisher sent me on a 6-city book tour. And my very first stop was a progressive radio station in New York. And you know what progressive means, of course. It means that the people at that radio station were about 25 years behind the times. There were faded posters on the wall about issues I remembered from when I was 10 years old. There was a poster of Mao Zedong and one of Che Guevara. I didn't expect the interviewer to be supportive, and he wasn't. To be sure, he hadn't read my book, that was obvious. But like a lot of people in the last few months, he didn't let that keep him from hating it. It wasn't a happy beginning, and when a few days later, an interviewer for a gay publication in Philadelphia told me that he had a friend coming over who loved my book, I naturally suspected some kind of a commie trick. But the friend came over, and he turned out to be, of all things, a member of Log Cabin Philadelphia, who ended up introducing me that night when I gave a reading. From Philadelphia, I went to Washington, where Rich Tafel kindly invited me to a Log Cabin reception. I couldn't have hoped for better moral support than I received that evening, from him and from everybody else who was there. I'd never in my life been in a room with so many smart, nice, mature gay people, or straight people for that matter, and never been in company that made me feel as hopeful about the future of the movement. In the months since then, Log Cabin members have played an important role in my life. My experience during the last few months has helped me to feel a particular sense of kinship with Rich, because we've both been outrageously misrepresented in the gay press, and we've both fielded angry calls on TV and radio shows, from the gay left as well as the anti-gay right. And Rich has done even more of this sort of thing than I have, and I don't know how he manages it. It's exasperating and it's exhausting. But it's also thrilling, because somewhere amid all the hate calls, you'll hear from a straight person who's learned something from you, or a gay person who feels less alone, or braver, or better about him or herself because of something you've said. And this is how the world changes, one heart and one mind at a time. And it is changing. That's something that's really been driven home to me very strongly in the last year. It's changing in spite of the efforts of people like Jesse Helms and Pat Robertson and Pat Buchanan. My experiences in the last few months have made me very optimistic. I've met straight people who have moved from intolerance to acceptance, and families that have found reconciliation and understanding. And I've met gay people who have stepped out of the closet or exchanged counterproductive political approaches for more intelligent, sensible approaches. A recent article in Out magazine called Rich and Me part of the new gay right. But to me anyway, this whole business is not about right versus left or Republican versus Democrat. It's about attending to human truths rather than clinging to specious ideologies. It's about living in the mainstream rather than at the margins. It's about making... Thanks. It's about making a realistic effort in the real world instead of conjuring utopian fantasies. And it's about having a sense of responsibility to others, especially to young gay people, rather than simply being preoccupied with yourself. We live in an era obsessed with the self, with self-help and self-improvement, and gay politics, in its least attractive moments, has sometimes been driven by a lamentable self-indulgence, a tendency to equate political action with self-expression, and to confuse civil rights with a license to behave selfishly. In doing so, it's played directly into the hands of those who have made it their business to deny us civil rights and social acceptance. Log Cabin has been described, and I've been described, as standing for the rejection, the exclusion of certain gay people. No. Nor do we deny or disavow the heroic contributions of gay people 10 and 20 and 25 years ago, without whom we wouldn't be gathered here today. What we are about is building on those people's contributions and highlighting what was good about the motivations for those contributions and transforming anger into action for positive change. What we're about is moving beyond certain ways of thinking about ourselves and our lives and our rights that do harm to all of us. No piece of writing in recent memory has done a better job of summing up these ways of thinking that I'm talking about than an essay by Tony Kushner that appeared in the July 4th issue of The Nation. The piece, entitled A Socialism of the Skin, was a response to two New Republic cover stories, a 1992 piece by Andrew Sullivan on the politics of homosexuality, and my own piece published a couple of months ago on where the gay movement should be going in the second generation after Stonewall. But in a larger sense, Kushner's piece was a reaction to the new gay activist thinking that is represented not only by me and Andrew, but I think it's fair to say by most of the people in this room. Kushner opposes this new activism because its goal is equal rights, while his goal is a, quote, homosexual liberation that he sees as part of a sweeping socialist utopian package deal. to which all gays are inherently obliged to declare our fealty. For Kushner, to put it simply, socialism follows from homosexuality as night follows day. As he explained, it all has something to do with, quote, honoring the true desire of the skin. In my view, what we're up against in this country is mainly the ignorance that makes many straight people fear homosexuality and consider it wrongly a threat to American society. For Kushner, the enemy is American society itself, and the gay rights movement is principally a means of attacking that society's foundations. Uninterested in such bourgeois goals as gay marriage and military service, he basically agrees with Donna Minkowitz, who, when she and I, along with Kushner and Sullivan, were on the Charlie Rose show a couple of days before Stonewall 25, said that, and I quote, "We don't want a place at the table. We want to turn the table over." I don't have to tell you that that sentiment is as philosophically alien to most gay people as it is to most straight people. In his Nation piece, Kushner speaks up for solidarity and against what he sees as Andrew Sullivan's and my assimilationism. But it's Kushner who is the real assimilationist. If I want all gays to be themselves, free of pressure from anyone, straight or gay, to become something other than who they are, he wants us all to conform to his and Minkowitz's notion of what it means to be gay. He wants us to share his politics. When he speaks of solidarity, he means solidarity on his own terms. Yet as more of us come out, it becomes increasingly clear that very few of us identify with that extreme worldview. Kushner can dismiss people like me and Andrew Sullivan and Rich Tafel and even all of Log Cabin, but he can't continue to pretend that he and those who share his extreme views speak for anything but a small minority of gay people. He can accuse us of cozying up to right-wing homophobes, but the reality, as we know, is quite the opposite. We've taken on the right-wing homophobes on what they think of as their home turf, namely the hearts and minds and consciences of otherwise decent middle Americans who have been taught to think of us as practitioners of a godless, subversive, irresponsible lifestyle into which we recruit young people. For us, a movement directed intelligently toward a goal of reasonable reform makes more practical sense than, say, responding to clerical homophobia by disrupting church services, responding to anti-gay oratory at Republican conventions by burning American flags, or responding to family values rhetoric by staging obstreperous protests at public schools. That sort of action is generally described as gay activism. But in practical terms, and more gay people with a variety of political histories and allegiances are coming to recognize this and to act responsibly upon this recognition. Such actions amount to anti-gay activism, for they only intensify fears and antagonisms and provide the Helmses and the Buchanans and the Falwells with fresh ammunition every time they want to shoot us down as anti-God, anti-American, and anti-family. More and more gay people are coming to understand, too, that the proper point of gay activism is not to produce a momentary liberating rush or an illusion of power or mere visibility. Those of us who reject such goals are condemned by people like Kushner as intolerant, exclusionary, selfish. But in fact, what's selfish is for an individual to engage in political acts that accomplish nothing except to work off a perhaps entirely understandable rage. Kushner writes in his Nation piece that Sullivan and I predict the emergence of increasing numbers of conservative homosexuals who are unsympathetic to the idea of linking their fortunes with any other political cause. Put it this way, most gay people, whether conservative or libertarian or moderate or liberal, reserve the right to make their own linkages. Most don't assume, as Kushner does, that radical socialism has all the answers to society's ills. Most would balk at his insistence that their homosexuality obliges them to subscribe wholeheartedly to the laundry list of far-left positions. Those of us who are serious about effecting lasting change for gay people in America feel strongly about participating in a responsible, strategically sensible, and clearly focused single-issue movement for gay rights, in which we would like every single gay person in America to become involved. But Kushner, for one, isn't serious at all. He makes fun of Andrew Sullivan's seriousness, and he adds that, quote, Bruce is even more serious than Andrew. This is meant as a put-down. Gay politics, you see, isn't supposed to be serious. What is it supposed to be? Kushner says he, quote, expects both hope and vision from his politics. Yes, utopian hope and vision. He admits his utopianism, citing Oscar Wilde's remark that, quote, a map of the world that does not include utopia is not worth even glancing at, close quote. But we've allowed ourselves to be guided for too long according to this map. It's time to replace it with a map of the real world. Kushner scorns gay people who, plotting their courses on real maps of the real world, patiently persevere in their attempts to change straight people's attitudes. I am always suspicious, he complains, of the glacier-paced patience of the right. Well, I'm impatient with the far left's abiding fascination with aimless utopianism. I'm impatient with models of activism that involve playing at revolution instead of focusing on the serious work of reform. Kushner insists that gay people require, quote, a politics that goes beyond. Yes, beyond Stonewall nostalgia and counterculture posturing. What we require is a politics that recognizes the real-world possibilities and limitations of politics, a realpolitik that stands every chance of effecting a genuine improvement in the lives of gay Americans, rather than a self-indulgent millenarianism full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. At Stonewall 25 in New York, as you all know, there were two marches. The main one that marched past the United Nations, and the splinter one, which was not about gay rights, but about personal lifestyle and political ideology. Not about being a part of society, but about being apart from it. Not about self-discipline and personal responsibility, but about self-indulgence and self-expression. The main march was much larger than the splinter march, and where the two marches met, something happened that, when I saw it, hit me at once as wonderfully symbolic. The splinter group coming up Fifth Avenue flowed into and was graciously accepted as part of the mainstream that was flowing westward on 57th Street. It's an image that will stay with me for a long time. A few years back, in a speech about the women's movement, the novelist Doris Lessing said, "This whole way of looking at people in terms of what divides us, instead of what we have in common, is one of the biggest mistakes we can make." Close quote. Nowadays, it sometimes seems that our whole society is making that mistake. Log Cabin isn't. And more gay people outside of Log Cabin aren't either. Together, we have the potential to do work that can make a truly positive difference, not only for those of us in this room, but for all Americans, gay and straight, right and left, Republican and Democrat, including those who think that you and I are perverts, and those who think we're traitors to the queer nation. In the last few months, meeting several of the people who are in this room today, I've felt increasingly confident that this movement is finally finding leaders who have a firm, realistic sense of where we should be going and how we can get there together. I'm honored to be here among them, and I'm honored to have been invited here to be with all of you at this historic moment in the gay rights movement. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us